Welcome to my talk, The Annoying Site, also known as the power of the web platform. So my name is Feross. I work on WebTorrent, which is a torrent library for the web. And I also built WebTorrent Desktop, which is an Electron app. I built it with some friends. And it was one of the first Electron apps, and it just recently passed 1.5 million total downloads, which is pretty cool. And standard.js as well. It's a JavaScript linter that catches programmer errors and enforces consistent code style in your projects. And it's also good at angering people, which is just good fun sometimes. And I've been doing open source since 2014, full-time since 2015. And you probably use some of my NPM packages. And my open source work is supported by many generous Patreon donors at the moment. So thank you to all of those people. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my most recent project that I've been working on called BitMidi. If you follow me on Twitter, you've probably seen me tweeting about it. So it's like a Wayback Machine for MIDI files. How many people here know what a MIDI file is? Raise your hand. OK, cool. So all right, cool. So it's used by a lot of people in the music industry, but my first exposure to it was in like my first days of browsing the web. It was often used with the BG Sound HTML tag for playing audio in the background automatically when you land on a web page. In the good old days, back when the web was fun and quirky. And so anyway, I wanted to play some of those. I looked online for basically a collection of zip file full of MIDIs, and I couldn't play it back in any program. So I thought it would be fun to use WebAssembly to take a MIDI player written in C and make it work on the web, and then host all these MIDI files. And so that's what it is. You can go there and you can play around with it. It's been good fun. It also gets a perfect Lighthouse score in Chrome Canary, which I'm really proud of. So it's really lightweight and really fast and works on mobile, and it's great. OK, so it's story time. I've been getting a lot of weird spam in my inbox lately. Here's one of the emails you can see on the projector. So yeah. Sock manufacturers from Zhejiang, China, are trying to sell me what they call sublimation socks, which I think they just mean printed socks. And I don't know, spam wastes so much of my time, and it always ends up in my inbox for some reason. It doesn't get filtered out properly. So I was thinking, is there some way that I could waste the spammer's time in return? How many of you felt that before? Like, you know, some people, they respond to the spam emails themselves, you know, and try to lure the spammers into like a lengthy conversation, and then at the end they like say, surprise, I'm not going to fall for what you did. But the thing is, like, that way it would waste a lot of my time as well, so I'm not going to do that. So I was wondering, what if there was some way that I could just send a link to this spammer and to all future spammers and teach them a lesson, you know, waste their time in return. So in the good old days, browsing the web was more dangerous. If you visited a web page, anything could happen. So this is an infamous trick on the early web. It was often known as the infinite alert loop. Raise your hand if you've been caught in one of these before. OK, oh my gosh, way more people than I would have guessed. In the past, when this actually worked, the only way to escape from this infinite alert loop was to force quit your web browser, which would cause you to lose any unsaved work, and that included all of the unsubmitted forms that you had in your browser. And so modern browsers are, unfortunately, multi-process. And so alert doesn't block the browser process anymore, which means that you can just X out the tab if it opens up an alert. So I opened up issues on all the major browsers, explaining to them that this broke an important use case for me. But for some reason, they closed all my issues immediately as won't fix. And this is a good XKCD about you know, strange workflows and use cases that I like. So in the good old days, we had Internet Explorer, we had ActiveX. So as I mentioned, visiting a web page had real risk associated with it. You had to watch out for danger. Click on a fake media player, and an ActiveX control would run, and it was game over. So this actually is not a real media player. This is actually a thing where with one click, you start running native code on your computer. Obvious, right? So if only ActiveX still ran automatically, I could build a really annoying website to send to this spammer. So I think of the web as evolving through 3 distinct phases. So there was the early days when the web was really the Wild West. You could do infinite alert loops. You could run ActiveX. And then we sort of grew up a little bit. We realized security is important. People started using Firefox. Chrome was released in 2008. So the 2000s were sort of focused on reining back what the web could do and sort of saying, okay, let's just really sandbox the heck out of this thing and make it really limited and make it just display documents and not own your computer when you visit a website. But now I think we're going into this third phase, which is we need powerful features in the web. We need the web to be able to compete with mobile apps. We need basically as much functionality as possible to move into the browser so that I don't need to make a native app. And there are still exceptions to this where you do need a native app, and this is where you see people often reaching for Electron, where they have a website that can do 95% of what they need, but there's like one thing, I want to be able to do, have something running in the background in the tray or whatever. And there's these few use cases where the web still can't support it, but basically, you can do almost everything you need in the web today, which is great. We have a lot of powerful features. So the good news for me in making this annoying website, I want to. I'm glad that the web platform has become really powerful. We have all these new APIs that have been added back to the web, and we can do things like service worker, web audio, web payments, push notifications, WebAssembly, WebGL, WebRTC, WebVR, and all these are fun to play with. And all these have delightful edge cases that the browser vendors didn't think about when making them, and we're going to have a lot of fun with that today. The web also has a lot of ancient APIs that can't be removed for backwards compatibility reasons. And some of these APIs are so old that I'm sure that many of you have never heard of them. And they're sort of just sitting there nicely in the browser, waiting to be discovered, waiting to be used in nefarious ways. So I decided to take a look at each one of these APIs one at a time and try to do the worst possible thing with them. I like this quote by Paul Boucher. It's, every system has two sets of rules. The rules as they are intended or commonly perceived, and the actual rules, also known as reality. In most complex systems, the gap between these two sets of rules is huge. Sometimes we catch a glimpse of the truth and discover the actual rules of a system. Once the actual rules are known, it may become possible to perform miracles, which are things that violate the perceived rules. So what Paul is calling miracles are also known as hacks. And so the definition of hacking that I like a lot is taking advantage of the gap between the written rules and the actual rules. So if there's no gap, then it's not possible to do something surprising because everybody already knows what's possible. It's not possible to hack. Fortunately, the web is full of places where the written rules, also known as the specs, diverge from the actual rules, also known as the implementations. We experience this every day on the web as web developers. So I didn't think it would be very hard to find some edge cases in some of these powerful new APIs. So I started looking through various web APIs, looking for anything that might help me make a really annoying website to send to this spammer. And I found some really weird ones, as you can see up here. Some of these, like the plaintext tag, are just absurd. How many of you have heard of the plaintext tag? Raise your hand. Okay, yeah, like 3, 4 people. It's absurd. It renders everything that appears after it as plain text. And there's no way to close it. So if you include it, then all the HTML tags afterwards will just show up in the page. I don't know what that's for, but anyway. There's also string, prototype, big, and quote, which are, they're not really good for annoying purposes, but they're just silly. Like, if you call big on a string, it just adds a big HTML tag on both sides of the string, and quote just adds double quotes on both sides. Yeah. I looked up what the big tag does. It actually it makes the size of the text one size bigger than the parent div around it. Really useful. Okay, so in all this searching, I finally found what I was looking for. I found it. Seriously. The best APIs. Window.moveTo and their friends. These methods allow you to move and to resize a browser window. I thought there was no way that these APIs would still be allowed in modern web browsers. Sure enough, when I tried them, they didn't work immediately. And the reason is actually kind of surprising. It's the same origin policy. So can you think about why moving a window would have anything to do with the same origin policy? Huh? Sort of. No, it's actually more that if you think about like when you're using your browser, you usually have multiple tabs open, right? And so if one site, like say this site here, BitMidi, were to try to resize the window, I would also be resizing the Wikipedia tab, which is implicitly, it's sort of, I'm affecting a domain on another origin, and that's just not allowed. Even though it's kind of a silly thing, it's like I'm just resizing it. You wouldn't think that's a big deal, but actually any kind of cross-origin communication without the site explicitly opting into it is a violation of the same origin policy. So at least that's how I explained to myself why the API didn't work. But I figured out a workaround for it. So if you open a new window using window.open, then you get this little window that pops up. And you can see the parameters there are, it's a really weird API. The first two parameters don't work anymore, so you just pass empty strings. The third one is like a comma-separated list of properties. I don't know why it's not an object, but anyway, that's what you do. And then you get this little window that pops up. And OK, so that's cool. Now let's try to move it around. So when I wrote this code and I ran it, it didn't work again. But I noticed a little thing in the browser that said pop-up window is blocked. So I did a little bit of research, figured out, OK, so what we need to do here is we need to trigger this window opening in response to a user-initiated event. So in other words, like a click or a key press. If we do that, we're allowed to open up windows. So this works. Now let's add the fun part. Right. So let's see it. So I have a little demo here. Can you see this? Yeah, we can see this. OK, cool. So if I click this button, you get a window that moves on its own. And if you try to grab it and move it around, it fights you. And if you try to right-click on it, too, the little right-click thing, also the menu moves, too. So, OK, we're off to a good start. This is pretty annoying. Can we do anything else? And so I thought I should intercept. Oh, sorry, you can see my slides here. I need to fix that. OK, there we go. So I thought, let's intercept all user-initiated events, and let's open a window on any possible interaction with the site at all. The best part about this is this includes things like Command W if you try to close the tab. This includes escape. If you try to, close, if a pop-up window comes up and you're like, escape, I need to get out of this, it'll actually open another pop-up window. Yeah, so it doesn't work on scroll, unfortunately, or on any of those other types of really common events, but like mouse move would be really ridiculous. But it works on mouse click, touch on touch devices, and all keystroke events. So let's just use that little function we just wrote called intercept user input, and when that happens, we will prevent whatever the default thing the browser was going to do, and we'll instead call this little open window function to open a window. So one other trick we should add is, so the pop-up windows can sort of go behind the main browser window if the user clicks on the main window, and then they'll be moving in the background, which wouldn't be nearly as annoying as if they were moving and they were all on the front of what you're doing. So we can just, on any click, we can just call this little focus windows function to bring all the windows to the front. You have to do this in response to a user event, like a click or something, but it works really nicely. OK, gets worse. What if we bounce the windows off the screen edges? And so this little bit of code here, you're probably not going to be able to read it fast enough, but it just detects when the window hits an edge, and then it just inverts the direction. OK, let's also play a random video in the window. So I have some good ones here that I found. The great part, too, is so browsers have started to try to prevent autoplaying video that includes audio. And if you try to do that, then the video just will get blocked. However, we're setting up the site so that the user will be tempted to interact with it in some way initially. We're going to put like a cute cat or something and say, click the cat to get started or something. We need some way to entice them to do an initial event in order to get these pop-ups going. And then once they've done that, we'll also be able to play sound because they've interacted with the site. So now we've sort of used this API, but can we do more? Is there anything else we can add? Any other APIs we can use? Of course, yes. So I'm going to get into a few more APIs. But first, one thing is worth discussing, which is the permission model for all of these APIs. As I was looking into them, I realized there's basically 4 models that the browser uses for permissioning each of these APIs. So I think of them in this way. So the first one is the API just always works. So APIs like that are, well, actually, I won't tell you the APIs. We'll see them as we go. So there's some APIs you can just always use. There are some that you can only use if you're on an HTTPS domain. if you've used a service worker, you know you have to be on a secure origin because it's a very powerful API. Same thing with geolocation. Then there are APIs which require user interaction. So this is to play sound, for example. And then the most sensitive APIs require explicit user permission. And that's what you've seen with the little prompt that comes up saying, like, can I use your webcam, for example? So as I go through these, I'm going to, hopefully I'll remember to mention which of these models each of the APIs falls under. Okay, so the first one we can do is we can copy text, spam text to the user's clipboard. So here we have an array of interesting ASCII art. And we can just call clipboard copy. Oh, I guess that's actually, yeah, that's a method that I wrote. But anyway, you call it, and it copies text to the user's clipboard. This API requires user interaction with the site. So if they click at all, we're just going to fill their clipboard with the cat, and then also a link to our site. So if they accidentally paste it into Slack, it'll go viral like that. Okay, one more. So we got speaking to the user. This one is great. This one's actually really great. So we can use the speech synthesis API, which lets you pass text to a special function, and then it will read it to the user. And so I have these nice phrases here that I found, which are extremely annoying when read in a computerized voice. Especially all the A's there. That one is great. The best thing about this API is that it can autoplay right away without user interaction as soon as you land on the page. On top of that, it's also unmutable. So if you right-click on the tab and you try to, say, mute this site, it doesn't affect this API. So I see the Chrome engineers in the audience opening up issues right now. I'll try to go slowly so that you have time to keep opening issues as we go through these. Yeah, so anyway, this is a great API. Here's a fun one you've probably seen before. You can ask the user, are you sure you want to leave this page when they're trying to close your website? So you just listen to the before unload event, and if you set this event.return value to true, then when the user tries to close the tab, it's going to say, are you sure you want to leave? You have unsaved changes. You've probably seen this used on like Google Docs or something if it hasn't sent up the changes to the server yet. So let's just make them have to do an extra click to close each of these pop-ups. Browsers have actually started to lock this one down a little bit, so you need to at least interact with the site once before this is allowed to pop up, which is annoying, but it's still pretty good, so we'll try it anyway. This is a good one. So we can register protocol handlers. So we attempt to register all possible protocols that the user might have on their computer. And then if they, so this one actually requires explicit user permission, so it's probably unlikely that they're going to say yes. But maybe in the frenzy of them trying to close all these windows going on their screen, they might just give us permission to handle all their Bitcoin transactions, which would be great. Might as well try, right? While we're at it, let's ask for the camera and the mic. One cool thing about this code is if you look towards the bottom, there's a little function called track.applyConstraints, and you'll see that I've passed torch true to it. Torch is actually the term that describes the camera flash. So if they do give us permission, we'll just turn their flash on their mobile device. It's nice. This one's good. We can vibrate the device. This actually works on Chrome on Android. And we, just to make it even better, we pick a random duration for each of the vibrates, so it goes like really inconsistently. This one, unfortunately, now also requires a user interaction, and it also doesn't work in iframes anymore because there were ads that were actually, like an ad would, in the iframe would just start causing buzzes on your phone to attract attention to the ad. So they stopped that. But anyway, if they interact at all with our site, which they're going to do, then we will be able to start buzzing their phone, which is nice. You're starting to notice a pattern here. Basically, like, the idea was, like, let's put some of these APIs behind a user interaction, and then, that way it can't be abused. But the thing is, one user interaction maybe shouldn't be allowed to cause all of these APIs to run at the same time, right? Okay, we got more. Safari has a feature called picture-in-picture, which allows a video site to pop a video out that hovers on top of all of your windows on your desktop, so you can, like, watch a lecture or something while you're working on other things. So what we do here is we start an invisible muted video so that it's ready to go, and then as soon as there's an initial user interaction with the site, we trigger the picture-in-picture, and then that pops the video out onto the desktop. And actually, Chrome is adding this API too in a future version, so that's good for us. This next one is amazing. This actually works. So we can actually just take away the cursor. That's great. Now they can't even chase down the windows and try to hit the X button. It's very disorienting. I also saw actually someone did something even more clever. You can actually set custom images as the cursor. And I saw this great site where someone actually made it so that they basically offset the cursor. I wish I had a video of it, but anyway, they offset the cursor down by 100 pixels in each direction, and then they pop something up that you try to close, but when you actually close it, you're actually enabling a permission prompt because your real cursor is up higher. It's actually great. Yeah. Security is hard. Okay, so here's another one. This is a great one too because I don't know if you've seen websites where it says you go to download a file and then you get the little countdown timer. It's downloading in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then the file downloads. Well, what's going on is actually you're allowed to download one file without any user interaction. If you think about it, right? Because it's counting down and then it downloads a file and you haven't even clicked anything. So we're allowed to trigger one file download immediately without any user interaction. But then further file downloads have to happen in response to a user-initiated event, otherwise the browser blocks them. And then asks the user, it says the site is trying to download multiple files, would you like to allow it? So we can just call this right away and give them various cat pictures in their downloads folder. And remember, each pop-up window can do this. Okay, this one is really nice. So if they go to hit Command W, so I mentioned earlier that you can run events when that happens, but I can't remember. I think it's Chrome actually doesn't let you call event.preventDefault on Command W because they don't want you to be able to intercept that. However, there's a good trick that actually works around this. So if you, in response to them pushing Command, you open a modal dialog like an alert, then the W actually doesn't do the full shortcut anymore because the dialog is opened up and now it just sees it as a W. So all you got to do is when they push Command, you just open a pop-up and then you open up an alert and then W doesn't work. So that's nice. And we can also vary it a little bit for good fun. So in some of the time we can call window.print, which asks if they want to print the page. That's nice. And it doesn't require any user interaction. You can just call that as much as you want. Let's also just throw in a random modal alert every 30 seconds just for more chaos. We can also full screen the browser. This happens on user interaction as well, so we need to have a click, but throw that in there. All right, so many of these. I think I'm going to run out of time. Okay, so this is a good one. I didn't come up with this one, but there's actually these URLs which if you send a GET request to them, they'll actually log the user out of the given website. And what's amazing is you can actually send GET requests cross-origin, right? Think about it. Every time you've included an image tag, you can include an image to a third-party website, and that image will load just fine. And what is that doing? That's making a GET request. Now, of course, if you try to load one of these URLs as an image, it's not going to show an image, but it'll still make the GET request. The data will come back. They'll be logged out, and then no image will show. So let's just try to do this. A lot of these, actually, half of these don't work anymore, but it does actually log you out of Google still, and a few other sites. So this is the rest of the code to do that. We just use, I think, XHR here or something like that. Yeah, and it works. Here's another one I discovered. So let's disable the back button. This is really fun. Look at what it's doing. It says if the user goes back, that'll trigger a pop state. So if the user goes back, just send them forward. This works. And then here's the thing, though. So the back button has a long press feature where you can hold down the back button and it'll show you multiple previous sites you can go back to, a whole list of them. We don't want them to be able to use that to actually skip past this code that we've written here. So what we do is when they first land on the site, we fill the history with extra entries. So we just push state a bunch of extra URLs in that are our own site. And then we push back the original URL back on so they can't tell that we've actually gone through and iterated, added 20 entries to the list. And so now they can't actually hold down either and try to go back. Okay, we got more. We can do some embarrassing searches. Try to keep it PG. So what we do here is we can actually, once in a while, when we open up a pop-up window, we'll make one of those pop-ups actually point to a Bing search. And I chose Bing because, it's pretty funny on its own, but you know what I mean, having Bing in your history. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so yeah, basically this is the code. It's a little too much to see what's going on, but basically it just opens a pop-up window. And then the interesting thing is, so if you open up a pop-up window and it's on another domain, like bing.com, then I'm no longer allowed to control it and move it around because it's on another origin, right? However, as long as you have a reference to the window, in other words, our site was the one that opened the window, so we have a handle, we have a variable that references that window. We can't actually reach into the page or do anything to it or move it around, but what we can do is set window.location on it and redirect it back to ourselves. So we can redirect you to Bing so that the search gets added to your history, and then we can redirect you back to our own site so that the window can start to move again, and then redirect you to another search, and then just keep looping like this. So the Bing windows will actually freeze once in a while they're loading the Bing site, but then once they've loaded, we redirect them back to our own domain so that we can continue moving them around your screen. Okay, okay. I think this is the last one. This one is extremely surprising. This probably is going to surprise a lot of you. So sites that link to sites that include links that open in a new tab using target equals _ blank will actually, so they'll open links in a new window. However, that new window that's been opened has a variable set called window.opener, and that references the window that opened it. This only happens if your site has been opened in a new tab, you can check window.opener, and that will be a pointer to that window that opened you, okay? So, like I said before, though, like having a pointer to a window on another origin doesn't necessarily help you. You can't really do anything. But what you can do is redirect it. So if anybody links to our site, the annoying site, and it opens in a new tab, and a lot of sites do this. For example, Facebook Messenger does this. When you click a link, it'll open in a new tab. We'll redirect Facebook to ourselves in response. So this is how you do that. It's actually really crazy that you can do this. So you can imagine like clicking a link to go to another site, and then that site that was previously like a trusted site now redirects to a phishing site or something. It's really bad. However, there is a way to work around this. You can add rel.equals_no_opener to all of your links that open in new tabs, and then that new tab will not have window.opener set. They can't do this by default because it's a breaking change, but you should definitely do this in all your links that open in a new window. Okay, cool. So let's see it. Let's put it all together and let's see what we got. All right. Okay, so I have Chrome here. Actually, let's start in Safari. Safari, actually, it's more funny in Safari. All right. Okay, so here we go. So it's telling me to hold down space for 3 seconds because that triggers a bunch of repeated events. I could also just click once, but I think it's funnier if I hold down space, so let's do that. Okay, so some stuff's happening. Oh yeah, I don't know if you can, oh yeah, my speaker's not plugged in, but yeah, I have sound going right now. So the more, let me turn the volume down a little bit. Okay, so the more that I hit escape, the more actually windows open up. So if I like, oh now see now my computer's actually frozen. Oh, there we go. All right, let me try to catch some of these. The thing is, if you miss and you actually click on the window, then you open up more pop-ups. So I'll try to do Command W instead, see it opens up this alert window with like a lot of cats in it. And I think I can hit X when that happens, though. That's actually useful. Oh, now it's trying to print. So I don't want to print anything now. Let's try Command W again. Okay, so I'm hitting Command W over and over again, but I'm getting, and this actually blocked the opening here. What if I try to go, okay, I can't even hit the window here, but if I try to go back, I got all the annoying site. If I check my, oh yeah, notice here too, this is the floating picture-in-picture window down here. And my downloads folder has been filled. Yeah, so this is kind of a disaster. The easiest way to get out of it is to just quit the browser. That actually works, but it's going to ask me if I'm sure. And then the best part is if you open up the browser again, it's going to recover all the windows. So yeah, if I'm silly enough to try to hit Command W to close out one of these, it's going to kick it off, and there we go. So you actually have to go by hand and mouse click on all the X's and hope that you don't miss. Yeah, anyway, so let me close this.
Please don't go.
Oh, did you hear that? So I use the speech synthesis API to, whenever I try to close a tab, it actually says, please don't go. Let me see if I can do that again. Stay on page.
Please don't go.
All right. I'm trying to exit it right now. Hold on. Okay. Okay, cool. It stopped. All right. And of course, this works cross-browser too. I can prove it. Obviously, it's going to work here too. It's frozen for some reason. Probably has trauma from the last time I did it. Okay, let me just force quit this right now. I don't have time. Okay, so anyway, yeah. So that site is actually live on theannoyingsite.com. So yeah, you can send it to your friends today. They won't be your friends afterwards. So I actually sent this to the spammer, and I think it was successful. I never got any more spam from him. And I have a few more demos. I don't know if I have time. Do I have like maybe an extra 2 minutes to show a few more things? Okay, cool. All right. Okay, cool. So I have some other, so this isn't, I didn't add these to the annoying site, but these are just sort of fun demos that I thought would be cool to show you. So let me think. I think it's this one. Yeah. Okay. So one thing we can do with the window moving API is we can make like actually interesting games using the windows. So we can like have windows that have physics. So like if I actually hit this with my what happened there? Oh, there we go. Yeah. So if I can like play with it with my mouse. It's really basic physics. It's just gravity and then detecting the edges of the windows. So I think it would be fun to make a game with this. If anybody wants to like try to do this, go for it. Then we can actually have real use cases for these APIs so that they can't take them away. Yeah, so this is a fun one. Okay, and then I have another one. So this is a fun one. So this one actually is a window which will find your mouse wherever it is and follow it around. So if I move my mouse, it tries to block whatever I'm doing. So if I try to like close something up here, it's just gonna follow me around and try to block me. And here's the best part. If I move really fast and I escape the window, look what it does. It still finds me again. So this is really, I'll explain how this works. It's pretty cool. So what's going on is every time I move my mouse, a mouse move event is triggered, and that will allow the window to recenter itself around the new position on the screen, right? But if I move really quickly and I leave the window, then what happens is, it's now not got a mouse move event in a while, and so it realizes that it's lost the mouse and it needs to search for it. And what you'll notice it doing right now is you see how it's jumping back and forth left and right? What it's doing is it hasn't gotten a mouse move event in a while, and so it's moving off the mouse and then moving back on the mouse. And even though it's not the mouse that's moved, it's the window that's moved under the mouse, it still triggers a mouse move event. And so that allows, this little back and forth motion allows me to detect that the mouse is still where I thought it was. It just hasn't moved. So I go off on, oh, it's still there. Okay, cool, stay there. But it does this every so often. And then, but if I escape completely, then it does a little back and forth. And I can actually show you in slow motion. So I have a version that runs at very much slower speeds. So if I move the mouse, you'll see it's gonna follow the mouse. This is running at much slower speed. Okay, and now if I hold still, you'll see it's gonna go off, on, and then it's like, oh, you're still there. Okay, I'll stay here for a while. And then I'll test again, off, on. But now if I escape, watch what happens. It does basically like a binary search, so it's going to try the left half of so it does back and forth. It sees, okay, the mouse isn't there now, so now I'm going to try the left side of the screen. I'm going to try the right side of the screen. Oh, there you are. Found you. All right, last one since I'm out of time. This one is, okay, I haven't actually told anyone about this one yet. You guys are the first to see it. And I'm probably not gonna share the code until I do something fun with it. I'm gonna make a game with it. But what I can do is, with a single keyboard event, I can open up an unlimited number of windows. Not just one, I can open up an unlimited number. That's not supposed to be possible, and yet, uh-oh, what happened? Oh, probably my computer, I don't know what's going on here. This happened a moment ago too. Huh. Let me restart really quick. Okay. My browser is really unhappy with me. Oh, it stopped there. Okay, well, anyway, when it doesn't freeze, it actually tiles the screen with Windows. Anyway, that's it. That's pretty much my talk. If you want to reach out to me, Feross on Twitter, I'm going to post my slides there afterwards, and my website's feross.org. Thank you very much.